Hey everybody, welcome back to another edition of Daily Doc Talk. I'm still your host, Dr. Drew Timmermans. Today I wanted to give you some practical tips on how you can address some morning fatigue or some daytime fatigue that you may be having. In terms of the volume of patients that I see who are dealing with fatigue, it's absolutely astronomical when you really look at the big scheme of things. Again, I'm going to be a little biased in that because that's part of what I market to. Those are the patients that I love to help the most, and so naturally they're going to be more attracted to coming into my funnel and getting the help that they need. And so, one of the big things we always start with is the big foundations and the needle movers. And so, we've talked before about water intake, we've talked a bit about nutrition, we've talked about sleep. Today, the practical tip that I want to focus on is where and when you're having your carbohydrate intake and how much you're having it throughout the day. And so in order to kind of frame this, we first need to just talk about our natural circadian rhythm. And so what that means is that in the morning, your cortisol is going to spike and peak the highest. That actually helps you to wake up in the morning. And for those of you who don't need an alarm to wake up and you wake up naturally, that means you actually have a really dialed in circadian rhythm and cortisol awakening response in the morning. Sometimes it's a good thing because it's when you need to get up. Sometimes it's not a good thing because it's 2 hours before your alarm, and then that's kind of a different equation that we need to address. But that increase in cortisol in the morning is what helps you to wake up. And so the people who hit their snooze a whole bunch of times until they feel like they've woken up enough to get up, that's when they're not getting that good cortisol awakening response. And there's different labs that I use to assess this. Sometimes we need to do this. Other times we just need to talk about symptoms and really kind of hone in on the foundations and make those changes. And so in relation to carbohydrates, when we eat carbohydrates, we get an insulin response. That insulin response tells our body that there's abundant food, and that's typically a good thing. However, in the context of cortisol, that increase in carbs and that increase in insulin can actually tell your body to make a little bit less cortisol and can actually lower that amount in your blood. And so when you have a high carbohydrate breakfast, that may actually lower your morning cortisol when we need and want that to be the highest. You will feel most awake with a high morning cortisol. Then as the cortisol tapers out through the day, we want it to be really, really low in the evening so that you can go to sleep. And again, we want it to be low at the appropriate time. If it's getting too low and it's 7 o'clock at night and you have to stay up until 9, 10 because of your job or whatever housework you have to do or anything like that, then that's obviously going to be an issue. And again, something else we need to address. But for the most part, we want that evening cortisol to decline so that way melatonin can rise naturally and you can go to bed. And so one of the ways if we are having elevated cortisol levels and you're having a hard time sleeping in the evening is we can actually shift those morning carbohydrates over into the evening. And so we increase carbohydrate intake with dinner and maybe a pre-bed snack. And that's actually going to help to lower your cortisol, put you in more of a parasympathetic state. So that way your body's able to increase melatonin production and you can have a restful sleep. And again, it's this perpetuation, this continuation of us doing this, of keeping cortisol high in the morning, cortisol low at night, high in the morning, low at night, through different lifestyle and nutritional methods that's going to help in the long term to regulate your cortisol curve and your circadian rhythm the most. No amount of supplements is going to be able to intuitively regulate your circadian rhythm the way that your body is going to be able to when it's given the right position. And so to recap, if you're having morning fatigue or you're having insomnia at night and you're unable to sleep, decrease your morning carbohydrates, replace those calories. That's important. You don't want to just strip away those calories. Replace those calories with healthy fats and proteins. So maybe you can do some eggs or if you have any leftover meat, anything like that. So move those carbohydrates in the morning to the evening. And so in the evening you can have sweet potatoes, brown rice, quinoa, or anything like that. All right, guys, thanks for tuning in. Hit like, subscribe, share this video to anyone you may know who is dealing with this issue, and I will see you guys next time.